Buon pomeriggio, bentrovati e bentrovate al nostro appuntamento, al nostro T-Corner di luglio. E adesso passiamo in inglese, visto che abbiamo il nostro ospite Romain Poivet, francese. So welcome to our T-Corner and welcome to Romain Poivet, that is a friend. We work together in ISO since decades, at least decades ago. And he is also the energy engagement leader at the World Benchmark Alliance organization. So he has a very large experience in the transition activity in relation to climate change. But today he is here to introduce an idea, crazy idea that we launched 3 years ago at the COP 27 in Sharm el-Sheikh when we organized a side event in the Italian pavilion with the top level representative of ISO. And we thought at that time that was the moment to start to open a very crazy discussion at that time because we expect to have ISO carbon accounting standard freely available on the market in order to better, more important role of these standards in the landscape of carbon accounting. So, Romain, the floor is yours for your introductory speech, and then we can have a further conversation together.
Yeah, thank you, Daniele. Very happy to be here with you today to actually talk about this crazy idea, as you said, about the free access or the open access of international standards from ISO on GHG accounting. So yeah, I've been working on standardization for almost 15 years now, 16 years. And so we know quite well each other with Daniele. In parallel to my involvement in standardization, I've been working for a long time for the French State Agency of Ecological Transition, ADEME. And I'm, as you said, Daniele, in charge of the engagement for the World Benchmarking Alliance, where we assess the company's transition plan credibility. And everything that we produce at WBA is, by the way, publicly available. So speaking about international standard, yeah, it started, all this idea started with this, actually this nice side event we organized with Daniele. And we suggested to have open access to the international standard on GHG accounting, both for the organization GHG inventory and for carbon footprint of product as well. To be honest, it was not really well welcome by ISO without any surprise. But I would say more or less in the meantime, back in 2022, we had a plenary meeting of the subcommittee on climate of ISO. It was in Paris, if I remember well, in October 2022. And actually, there were already an agreement from the SC7 members, so the subcommittee on climate members, to actually support this idea and to actually call ISO for the dissemination and the free access of those standards. So this is not just a crazy idea from Daniele and I, it's also an idea that was supported by all the members from the subcommittee on climate. And I would say the rationales to support this idea is pretty simple. Basically, you have all around the world international experts that dedicate time to develop those standards, but those standards are only available behind paywall, which is a huge barrier in terms of dissemination of those standards compared to the private standards that can exist all around the world that are already freely available. And basically, I guess you are quite familiar with the GHG protocol accounting standard, which is already free since creation of the of the GHG protocol. So back in beginning of the 2000, the beginning of the 2000s years. So we think that if those if the ISO standards are not freely available, this is a barriers for access for the potential users, and it's also quite unfair for lots of jurisdictions that could develop some mandatory scheme for GHG accounting, especially because, and this is what was enlightened by the Court of Justice, the European Court of Justice, beginning of this year, basically considering the fact that every citizen should have access, should have the same right to access to the laws. When you develop a new law or a new mandatory scheme, and you refer to standards, those standards shall be available, freely available, because it's a question of fairness and equity access to the law. So this is why we have strongly pushed for several years with Daniele to ensure that those standards are on open access, especially if you want to ensure that GHG accounting are done the same way, I don't know, in Canada and Australia, in India, in France, Italy, wherever. If you really want to ensure that GHG inventory is made the same way wherever the GHG inventory is performed, you need to use international standards. And this is exactly why international standards are developed. So, it's, and actually in the recent years, I would say since maybe 2 or 3 years, especially in European context, for instance, where I guess you are aware of the new directive on corporate sustainability reporting, the CSRD. Actually, the European Commission has not been able to refer to really namely to the ISO 40064 Part 1, which is the GHG accounting standard for organization, because it's not available for free. So you can see that the non-free access of those standards is also a barrier for policymakers. So that means that from a policymaker's perspective, when you develop a new scheme, a new mandatory scheme, if you want to use a standard, basically you have to copy paste somehow a standard which is not allowed, due to copyright due to the copyright. So you need to imagine some kind of paraphrase or really, rewrite the standard that already exists, which is actually a waste of time and a waste of public money, which is, I think, an important point in the current context, especially, for instance, in France. But I guess it's more or less the same challenge everywhere in Europe and elsewhere in the world. And we also consider that a few years ago, the ISO, or as an organization, signed the London Declaration. And the London Declaration was actually a commitment from ISO and its members to support, I would say, the standardization effort, the international standardization effort, to provide relevant standards to support the climate, let's say, the climate goals. So I would say a really low-hanging fruit for ISO to contribute really to this commitment signed for the London Declaration is actually to make those standards that are already existing freely available. Knowing that in the past, in the really recent past, which was the COVID period, I guess you all remember this crazy moment. During the COVID crisis, ISO made a few standards available for free to support the international effort. It was done for all the the breathing system and some paramedical or medical equipment. All those standards related to those kind of equipment were made available for free, actually to support the international effort. And if we all agreed on the fact that basically the climate crisis and then maybe the biodiversity crisis are the key crises against which the humanity, mankind is really exposed to, which is an unprecedented crisis even compared to the COVID crisis. I think we should really support this idea of having standards that are written for, I would say, a common good, which is actually, in this case, preserving or protecting climate. I think those standards should really be made available for free, knowing that, yeah, it's not even a question of I don't know, revenue generation for ISO, because those standards are really not the most used around the world. So it won't be, I would say, a loss of revenue for ISO. So there are lots of arguments to really support this free access to those standards.
Yes, thank you, Romain. I started from the end because you mentioned the COVID crisis and the climate crisis, no? And this is a very important point in my view because in some way imply that for somebody the climate crisis is not so important as it was the COVID crisis, no? Because we all recognize that they need to do something to work all together, to have the engagement, the public engagement, the private engagement, the same direction during the COVID crisis, and we should expect the same kind of commitment to face the challenge of climate change. So this is one general consideration. But you also underline more times why this availability, free availability, is important in particular in the context of a legislator and the public decision. Because we can face as private companies, private sector, a competition between ISO and GHG protocol, for example. Because in Italy, to give an example, because the participant of the TICON in this moment are mainly Italian, but we have a strong accreditation system in Italy based managed by Accredia that is based on ISO standard. So we are not worried in terms of competition among companies in the decision to go in the direction of ISO instead of greenhouse gas protocol. But at the same time, when the same company need to apply the CSRD, need to apply the taxonomy, need to apply the kind of legislation, and they are forced to follow a specific decision taken at the European Commission level, then the trouble starts to be more important, no? And when a company need to follow the Science-Based Target Initiative requirement, for example, then another kind of trouble becomes important. So obviously, the BTI is not a public context, but there are other reasons behind the decision to stay with for them to stay with the greenhouse gas protocol. But in particular, in the public domain, the importance to a free available standard is crucial. And this is for sure an important point.
And it's also a question about the how those standards are developed. I mean, yeah, I don't know how many we are today, maybe 10, 15 people around the table. We can just decide together to create a new standard and develop a private standard and pretend that it's the best standard and that it should be or shall be the standard used by everyone around the world. But still, it will remain a private standard. So the way, and I guess you may be a bit familiar with how the ISO standards are developed, but the ISO standard really followed a process that ensure that every standardization bodies and every expert from all around the world can get involved in the process and can provide these inputs and provide their criticism and expertise for the elaboration of or the revision or the development of a new standard. And it's important to understand that this, the way, and that's, I think, honestly, to 15 years after, as I say, I've been involved like 16 years in ISO standard. This is why I'm still involved in the ISO standard, because I really respect the process, and because I think it's the only way to really ensure that you give the same, let's say, rights to someone living in, I don't know, South Africa or India and Malaysia and Italy and France to contribute to the standard. And there are debates among experts, and then we find consensus. And the idea is that those standards are really developed based on the consensus approach. So at the end of the process, that means that every standardization bodies around the world, agreed with this with the deliverable standard, which is not the same for private standard development. As I said, we can all together decide to develop a standard, but it will be the standard that reflect our opinion. And we can have a
Yeah, yeah.
consensus all together, but still, it will be only a private standard developed by Equilibrias and friends.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
very dangerous, then just to finish on that, it's very dangerous to impose private standard within regulations just because they are free. Because then who really, I would say, run the standards? I mean, you can introduce lots of bias and conflict of interest if you start to impose some private standard in the regulation. And the regulation should not be exposed to this kind of conflict of interest.
Yes, because the following question is who is funding
Exactly.
the private standard for sure, and that is a for sure an important topic. And I also always say that developing ISO standard is a kind of kind and polite way to have a fighting together. No, because we have really different views. We defend our views, but at the same time, we need to find in a polite way the common sense, the common ground. But I don't want to have a conversation only with Romain and myself. So if somebody has any question or any comments, even not only question on this idea to promote, because we commit ourselves as Equilibria since a few months to have a quite clear campaign in favor of free availability for other accounting standards. So we are strongly committed in this direction, but I don't know if somebody want to add something. Otherwise, I can comment another point, Romain, because you make the example of the comparison with the ISO standard freely available for COVID during the COVID pandemic. At the same time, there are other experience in the carbon management area where ISO in some ways start to work with the free available documents. We have the
Mm,
example of IWA 42, the International Workshop Agreement is a kind of pre-standard
mm,
for net zero. ISO that now is under development with as a ISO 14060. And when IWA 42 was freely available, I believe was in Dubai the year after Sharm el Sheikh.
mm,
There
mm,
was a
mm.
very large presentation of ISO, and one of the important points to present the importance of IWA 42 was that this document is a freely available document from ISO.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you remember this example and the party during with the presentation of the public event also.
And it was crazy because all the speech made by ISO high level people were about, let's say, self-congratulation, or be really happy for the success of this net zero guidelines or pre-standard, and because it was the first time that an ISO document on climate was downloaded more than, I don't remember, 3,000 times or something like that. So they were really happy and let's say self-congratulation themselves, congratulation themselves for this success. But the success was mainly driven by the fact that the document was on open access. So then we had this discussion with Daniel. He say, okay, but do the same for the GHG accounting standards, and it will be the same success. And then they say, no, no way. So there is still this, I don't know, this I would say mindset barrier in ISO governance to set those standards free. well, I don't know. I still don't understand the rationale for not doing that. So, and yeah,
Yeah.
and if you have questions, yeah, or if you also disagree with Daniele and I, please disagree.
Yes. Open your microphone that you're more than welcome if you like to add something. I'm looking at the microphone. I don't see in this moment. Okay, Leonardo.
Okay. Hi, Roman. Nice to meet you.
No?
I have a question. Do you think there are other elements than just like the paywall, the price that would like block ISO 64.1 to like take advantage over the GHG protocol? Like, what are these other elements that you could think could like be a problem in the expansion of ISO beside the paywall?
In terms of applicability, for example, of the document,
For example, I'm just curious if you have something in your mind, or it's just like too wide of an answer. You can just like avoid it.
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I don't think so, because if you look at the main competitor to ISO standard is GHG protocol, and if you look at the number of, I don't know, even the number of pages or the amount of document requirement recommendation that are in the GHG protocol, it doesn't seem to be a barriers for companies to adopt the document and to use the document. On ISO things, for instance, even all the fact is that all the example and the example of barriers for the dissemination of ISO standard are always linked to the fact that it's available behind paywall. Even from, I mean, from the people working at UN Climate Action Team, or even I can mention some. I won't name those big organizations, but some organization that contacted me to share with them the standard, because the process, the internal process for those companies and those organizations, they said just to pay to see the document was too complex, and they say, can you just share? We promise we will buy it later, but the internal process is too complex, and we need the document right now. So can you share with us the document? Because if we follow all I would say the purchase procedure, we will have the document in 6 months for a document that only cost like 300 euros, more or less. So it was completely crazy, and it was the same for policymaker. As I said, I've worked for many years for the French state agency of environment, and we used to work for the Ministry of Environment on the mandatory GHG reporting scheme in France, and we were not allowed to use the standard because it was available behind paywall, and because it was not allowed by the law to refer that to a document that is not available for everyone. So basically, we rewrite mandatory methodology, which is basically a copy paste of the ISO standard. So all the examples I have are really linked to these barriers of for the paywall, which is a barrier for the dissemination.
Yes, another example, this very recent example, is in connection with California, where they developed their disclosure regulation, and we provide comments to say, please allow the use, not request as a mandatory, but allow the use of ISO standard as an alternative for the quantification of the emission of the organization. And what they decided was, no, we don't take even in consideration this option because it's underpayment. So we don't want to consider a document as underpayment. So this really, for sure, one of the most important reason, or even not one, the most important, absolutely. And another point, Romain, maybe somebody can think that we are crazy. We were crazy 3 years ago, but we are still crazy to ask this option. But we also need to share the reality that in these years there was some movement, because we have several conversations at the higher level of ISO representatives. And this movement are going in direction of the option, the possibility. They introduce a new procedure in order to decide which standard could be or should be freely available. The key point is only in terms of speed of the time, because if after 3 years we are still discussing the option to make a standard freely available, it's something that is out of the time scale of fighting in a way climate change. This is really another very important point, Romain.
Yeah, and actually, this is exactly why we launched this kind of campaign together. It's because actually, since 2022, when there were disagreements from all the SC7 members to ask ISO high levels people to make those standards available for free, and because we are, as you said, we are 3 years later, and none of the SC7, so the subcommittee on climate, never received any formal answer from ISO. It's completely crazy. I mean, we all agreed. We said we need to have access. We need to have those standards available for free, and we asked ISO to make them available for free. It was a resolution taken by, it was it's not even the majority, it was the full, nobody voted against. And 3 years later, no decision was taken. And we don't even receive like a no, a formal no, or and we only have like informal discussions saying, nah, it's not doable, it's too complicated, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, we started to have some I would say reactions from ISO because we started this campaign with Daniele, and which is completely crazy. So there is a time, I would say a time horizon issue.
Yes, and I don't know if there are other questions or comments. I always look at the microphone. If somebody want to raise a point, you are always welcome. I don't see anybody at the moment. Okay, and another point is that this is not disruptive for ISO. Somebody is worried that we want to destroy the business model of the standardization body that have an important part of their revenue with the selling of the standard. No, selling standard is one of not the most important, but for some NSB national standard bodies is one of the most important revenue. But it's not the point, because there are, if you give the leadership of international standard to be recognized as the most important document for the carbon accounting, then you have a lot of other standards that are complementary to these core documents. You have standard for the verification, for the accreditation, for the competence of verifiers. You have the PCRs. You will have the OSR with the new version of ISO 14064 Part 1. So there are other opportunities for the national standard body to maintain the business if they will be relevant in the market. Because it's the key point, Romain, no?
Well, and you can even buy the price and the price national standardization body sell at the moment. The standards are not the same. I'm pretty sure that you can buy the 40067 or 40064 Part 1 in Italy at a different price that is sold in France or in, I don't know, in Germany or Malaysia or whatever. So you can even find always a trick to buy those standards as a lower cost. And so, and even ISO, even the national standardization bodies are not able to. We have been asking this question, I think, for more than 10 years, which is about the dissemination of those standards. How many of those standards are really disseminated and sold around the world? Nobody was able to provide this information. So they can't even say if they are, let's say, going to lose hundreds of euros or thousands or millions of euros just by making those standards available for free.
Wrong choices and maybe making worse business for NSB. Okay,
Yeah.
the cup of tea is gone, and the
Okay.
Venus is also gone for us. So we have a very interesting conversation with Romain. I hope that we don't need to have this kind of conversation anymore in the future, because it means that somebody will decide to make the standard field available, but we will see what can happen in the future. And at the same time, we will continue with our tea corner. The next one will be the 20th of August, and will be a campaign, a very interesting campaign in my view. It's bad advertising. So how or why we should forbid the advertisement of fossil fuel companies, and the same way that is not allowed to have advertisement in the city of cigarettes, for example. So cigarette is not good for the health of the people, and fossil fuel is not good for the health of the planet and the people in a general way. So we have this conversation with Frederick Daly that is promoting this campaign. And the next workshop, there is more extensive discussion that we will have in September, will be on CSRD. So something that we mentioned today, this is always an important topic for companies. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy your holiday. If you will have a holiday in the next weeks of months, and see you soon in August again. Thank you. Thank you.